wake up in the morning and say, I got to see my kids again.
Yeah.
That appreciation for some simple things in life, where everything is about what everybody, the image and the projection of, do I have the right house? Do I have the right wife? Do I have the right car? And not that a lot of people are that like that, but you kind of learn that simplicity sometimes is in the difficulty of simplicity and living
Yeah.
a simple, because it is more difficult to live simple than it is to live complicated. We can complicate the heck out of everything very simply.
And very easily.
Very
And I
easily.
think
Yeah.
you know, our society is really set up for that, right?
Yeah.
It's because I've seen, you know, people who they're not in the pest industry, but close friends of mine who are successful, um, really go from not having much to being able to basically do anything
Right.
at any time ever, and they're just not happy.
They're not. Yeah.
You know,
And
and
that's an
it's like,
illusion. I
yeah,
wrote the other day, I wrote a post that said, you know, the illusion of social media. It isn't virtual reality. It's a virtual illusion, because we're living life through what we see on these posts and what we think that happiness is. And that's just a snapshot in time.
yeah,
But it isn't the reality for a lot of people. I think that you really need to, do you like to read?
yeah.
Okay. A book that I highly recommend that you read to kind of help you narrow in your focus, where most people want to go wide and they want to do everything and all this. I said, no, narrow it down to like 2 or 3 specific things you're going to do, and why it's important. Blue Ocean Strategy. Um, you know, the difference between Circus Soleil and Ringling Brothers. A lot of these pest control companies are like 3-ring circuses, where Circus Soleil is a refined with an orchestra and gymnasts and athletes, and they didn't go after, they have no elephants. You think you have a circus, you have to have an elephant. They saw where everything was going. You know what's funny? In your market, there's 3 guys right now with eco-friendly pest control, and you would never think there would be 3 guys in that market with eco-friendly pest control. That says a whole lot of where that market's going.
Yeah.
And why I would be interested in going into that market, because you have 2 major players. You got Home Team and you have Terminex in your market, and then you have a very old company there, that's been there a long while. I forgot what his name was, but then I see 2 other natural companies. The thing is, they're further up north than where you're at. You're kind of like on the south end side of the town. Then I looked at all the high money areas, and there's nice money areas there where I would target.
They're building tons of stuff. That's another thing. And I used to be like, oh man, I'm behind the curve. You know, it's just, again, right, it's always a time thing. Because for me, it's time just stops, and then like it fast forwards, and you're like, whoa, where did 4 or 5 years of my life go? Like, because when you're waking up every day and you're really in like survival mode, and you're just like, I gotta get to the next day, I gotta get to the next day. And that doesn't just have to be health, that could be anything, right? That could be your business, that could be whatever. It is very narrowing in that aspect, where you're not really paying attention to everything else going around you. And so when I finally got like, you know, let me sit down and get on my computer and log back in and start kind of reabsorbing, I was lost. I'm just like, wow, dude, is really this much changed in, you know, this small amount of time? And yes, it does. I mean, we know that in pest control, there's always advances and new products and just tons of stuff. And it was very daunting, right, initially, to kind of jump back in and say, oh, well, maybe I'm only doing this because it's the only thing I've ever really done, and I'm just reverting to what I know. But then in my heart, I felt like, nah, because guess what? I still have like the cards, and just there's so much stuff, man. It's not just about work, that I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for the industry. And so looking at what other people did in my area, I didn't really pay a lot of attention. And so there's been, you know, some new upstarts, and like you said, that's great, dude. I have nothing to say about anybody doing their thing. I mean, good for you. I'm not worried about what anybody else is doing.
Yeah.
But from my own eyes, I can tell you, living in my area, we've had probably 4,000 homes built in the last 4 years, which here I've lived here my entire life, and I can tell you where some of these major, 6-lane highways now were like dirt roads when I was a
Right.
kid. It just blew up in a couple decades, which, like it or not, it is what it is. And so
Yeah.
I really wanted to utilize the fact that I know that there's 2 or 3 brand new developments going in, and I know that there are a couple big companies that just, they're going to have those accounts right off the bat, but that doesn't mean that I can't go in later to try to pick up those accounts for
Yeah.
myself.
I think
Keeping it local was a huge thing for me because I don't have to drive an hour and a half, to accounts where, I mean, before that's kind of how my county worked. It was either one side or the other. Now there's
right.
a ton of stuff in the middle. So it's cool.
Yeah, no, I saw the development and what's going on. What I would do is, you got to find your niche. And being that, I would never recommend to a guy, and knowing what I know now, of what I know about chemicals and pest control and cancer and all this, to go into lawn. I mean, I would do GPC, IPM, classic technical IPM, where you're using very little products, where you're focused in on a niche. Like, you got to find out. Here's I'll put a caveat to what people say. I don't care what my competition is doing. I said, you need to care what your competition is doing. You need to find out what they are doing specifically, and then you need to find that kink in their armor of what they're not going after. Because a guy like you that doesn't want to be the next big 10 route company, that just wants to go do his thing, you have to charge high prices. And you got to find niches and where they're failing and what they don't want to do. And you have to know your competition. You have to know where the pricing is in the market. Because I used to make more money on one-time deals than anybody else, because there was nobody willing to do it without a contract. And here in Miami now, everybody has no contract. What the funny part is, all my competitors, all my independent guys that are around me that I know, are charging the same price for an initial that the big companies are with a contract. In other words, with no long-term contract. In other words, the top 3 in the market are 165 and 65 EOM. That's every other month.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing without a contract. So there is this thing where we have no contracts and we charge more is gone. That leverage is gone now. When I used to have it, when I was a niche business doing eco-friendly pest control, and I was the only guy doing it. And now more and more guys are popping up. That's no longer a big of a niche. But so now what did I decide I have to do? I have to lower my prices to compete with head to head with these guys. But rather than them going to a large brand, they're coming to us and says, if you give me the eco-friendly for the same price that I would be paying with no contract, that's my unique selling proposition. That's what I have to do to compete. And a lot of guys are listening to me, and I says, I would never do that. Why would you do that? I says, you don't understand. You're not in the second largest market in the country. This is not, what you can get away with doing in your market. I can't get away. What some guy can get away with in Tampa, which is real next to you, I can't get away with in Miami. It's a totally different. It's like, New York, LA, Miami, New York, LA, Miami. These are the top, and this is brutal. Chicago, it's brutal. You can't do a lot of things. So I said, okay, we're going to up it up one more. We're going to get to the point where we're going to offer same-day service when nobody can. And that's, so what is our unique selling proposition? We got to constantly be redefining that, because it doesn't stay constant, because I don't live in a little town. Everybody here's a hustler. It's like
Miami.
it's Miami, and people don't understand that. What you got to do is say, you could, what if you could make more money on short-term rentals and focus on short-term rentals when they can't service short-term rentals the same way? What if you were focusing on the condos that are up there that nobody focuses on condos and offer one-time services where you're charging $400 or $500 for a one-time service. And you're making that much on one time, where they say, no, you got to sign a 1-year contract to get 159 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's about finding out what your competition is not doing more than being interested in what they are doing, so you can find your niche. But unless you do market research, people say, I don't care what my competition is, I just do my own thing. I said, that's not realistic. You can't just you can't just say, I'm going to make, white pizzas when there's no market for white pizzas.
Yeah.
Nobody cares for it. It's just a foodie thing. There's only 1%. Like, I could get away in Miami with 2.8 million people on the 1%.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, I think that, looking at market stuff, it's something that's completely alien to me. I mean, obviously I've never done it before. I hear a lot of people talk about it. So, I mean, it is important. And my biggest fear, honestly, and I mean, you might laugh, but I used to go, so I've got a gas station right down the street from my house. And every day I would go there, and I would always see the same guy. He's, don't know if he was out there running with all the liability and insurance that you could ever want, but he was just an older guy. B&G in the back of his truck, like he had some funny sign on the side of his truck or something. And I don't know why, but that guy petrified me, because he just, and I'm not talking down on anybody. If that's what makes you happy, that's great. But it's like, I don't know what are you doing out here, dude? Like, are you just going and doing one stop a day? And like, you're okay with buying a 12-pack and going fishing for the rest of the day? Like, I don't know. But for some reason, I always stuck in my mind, like, I don't want to go start a business and it not be what I need it to be, right? You don't want to be this guy who's just going to disappear into obscurity because it didn't work for you, because you didn't do your diligence and look into these.
Oop, I lost you there for a second. I think I lost you, an internet connection. Oh, lost you.
Things. And that's the difference is, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you back now. I lost you there for a second, the internet connection. Yep, I can hear you now.
Coming right back at it. Yeah, so I just know there's things there that I need to focus on that are important, that as a tech, because I mean, that's what I was, and trying to step out of that role and be a business owner. Those are the things that you need guidelines for, right? If you don't have something to look at and to build upon, what am I doing? Like, I'm just going to go get my certs and my insurance and just go spray houses. I don't want to do that. Like,
right.
I need more than it. And that's why, again, I reached out to, different people, because I just felt like, hey, you guys have been there. You guys have had to do things. You guys have rebuilt. And it's just the information that I've gotten from all of you guys really has just been invaluable in the pre-planning phases. But there's little, like I say, there's little things there that I'm trying to just align, that when I do step out and I'm ready to roll, it's all good.
Yeah, give me an example of these little things, because that's vitally important. I mean, of what you're trying to accomplish there.
Right. So I think the biggest thing is, well, the first thing I did is I would just sit down, with a pad and paper and say, like, hey, I would like to make an X amount of money every year. Right. And if that allows me to do the things that I want to do, and let's be real here, like, that's why I'm starting a business, to make money. Right. I mean, that's it. But how and when and the amount of what these services cost, like referring back to what other guys are doing and your competition is doing, I've been out of it so long that like the pricing here in my area is just, you wouldn't have been able to charge what they charge today when I got out of it, in 2007, late 2017, early 18. So, I mean, if you went and knocked on a door and you try to sell service for what they're doing now, people would just been like, there's no way, they can't afford it. Right. That was the thing. We didn't have as many of these new homes here either. So the income level has shifted dramatically. I mean, and so those are things that I know I need to take note of and take advantage of, so that I'm not pricing myself out of a smaller local market, and B, charging what I feel like I am worth, right? That's the other thing. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to be the guy out here doing EOMs for $14, dude. Like,
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Let's tackle that. Let's tackle that, because there's a couple of things that we have to come to terms with. Number one is what I feel I'm worth. What I feel I'm worth is totally irrelevant to the market. This idea that I'm going to get paid what I'm worth, no, you're going to get paid what you can compete on, and that's going to depend on some unique selling propositions that you have that nobody else has. Let's just tackle two sides of this coin for a minute.
Sure.
What do I want to make to live the life I want to live, and the reality of that? Because you're 40 and you have health concerns, and so do I. So I'm 50. I'm a little bit ahead of you 10 years. I can tell you that you're not going to be able to be in the back of a truck your whole life.
Right.
And between now and retirement, or whenever you feel like you need to retire because you can no longer do it physically, how long is that going to be before you can no longer physically, and the business will get so large that you say, this is it. This is all I can mentally, emotionally, physically handle, and I can't handle anymore. And is that going to be enough to sustain that lifestyle that you need? Not the one you want,
right?
The one you really need to provide for your family, to provide for your kids, maybe buy the bass boat, maybe not. It depends. But what does that realistically look like? And you have to be able to do some good, solid financial analysis of how many accounts can I manage? Where is the market realistically at? And am I okay charging the same price? Because here's what the challenge mentally you're going to come up against. You have those door-to-door guys selling these, what was his price? Just shoot me his price on what he told me his initial was in EOM or every quarterly or whatever.
So the initial was, what did he say? I mean, it was just a sales pitch, so it was BS.
Yeah.
But he was like, we normally do these for 800, but today, I'll do it for 625. Or so. I mean, to me, I was like, whoa, holy, like that's not what we were doing then. And again, I'm not gonna, put my feet in concrete blocks, so to speak, and stay locked down in one spot and not have an open mind that things do cost more money today. It's just how it is.
Yeah. But do you remember what his real number was?
I never even.
I would have got. Okay, but
no.
Like right now, a lot of these in Miami, a lot of guys complain about low ballers, right? And you complain about the low ballers and these big companies lowballing. These guys are coming in at $259 initial with a 2-year contract and $159 a quarter. While I still have guys not willing to charge more than $65 every other month. I mean, these guys are making 3x. Now, understand the infrastructure requires that 50% of that money be given to them. So the first year, 50% of it is gone. It's literally, they have to have those ridiculous prices to pay these salespeople to acquire the accounts. What the other thing they don't tell you is that 30 to 50% of those cancel. So you have a huge cancel rate. You have a huge cost of sales, upfront sales, to get those prices. But why would you, as an independent owner, offering better quality, better customer service, better results, charge less than what they're charging?
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So again, some of these guys have these limiting beliefs that no, that's absurd. That pricing they're gouging the customer. No, they're not. The market decides what the market pays, and if they can get it, why can't you get it? That's always my point. Is why do you feel that you're gouging the customer when the market is, they already proven the market is willing to pay for it? You keep underselling it under a false belief that you're gouging the market. I just had a friend in Alabama who we're become really good friends. And I said, what is your profit margin on doing that termite job? And he said, after I paid everybody, I said, it was 30%. I said, this is why you're broke. Because the other company that did it charged $10,000 more, and everybody was charging $10,000 more than he was, and he felt he was gouging people because he's a good Christian person, because he's honest, but he's got a self-limiting belief that says, no, my service, I think that is outrageous to charge that much. Unless you're making 50% gross profit, you're going to be broke. This is why you can't fix the truck. This is why you're in an old truck and not a new truck. And to hear somebody look at you and tell you that, and rocks your core of what you think you're doing wrong when you're not doing something wrong, when he could have literally charged 2,000 less, not 10 less.
Right.
And still made a good. So if you're not shooting for that 55%, the ideal number right now in the market for any pest control company to survive, the ideal number to grow a little bit is that magic number is 55%. There is a magic number. The minimum you should accept is 50% profit gross. That means after you paid the truck, the technician, the chemicals, the insurance on the truck, the workman's comp, after you've paid all that and you factored all that in, it should produce 50%. So that means if you're producing 150,000 a year route, it needs to leave the business 75 grand. Any less than that, you won't be able to grow. You're saying, I'm not interested in growing. I just want to stay myself. I said, that's fine now. What happens if you get sick again? What happens if you have an injury? What happens in 10 years? That mentality is going to be totally different. Trust me. My mentality today is totally different than when I started and I was 34. So 50%, if you're going to grow exponentially, you're going to have to get to that 60%, but that means you're going to shortchange the employee, paying them a low wage. This is how these companies are paying 13, 14, 15, 18 an hour when their labor is about 12% to 14% versus 25% for a mature tech. So you got hard decisions to make that you say, I want to grow, but unless I have those gross profit margins, I can never hire a technician.
Right.
There won't be enough for me and the tech. And the tech now in different parts of the country, $18, $20 an hour is nothing because they're getting that at Starbucks.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I've seen that in a lot of the groups. It's, guys coming in and asking for advice. And it's like, I'm unsure, what I'm making it now, on my own. But as soon as I bring someone else in, that's going to cut that part of it out for me. And it's like, you can't, I mean, how could you sacrifice if you were already used to doing that, right? Everything is set up and scheduled around what you're doing already. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to give this guy half of what I'm getting just because. Can't do it.
Right. And so what you have to do is this. You have to decide how much can a tech really, because here's what people forget about why these people will pay these enormous amount for these companies is that route density is king. This is what everyone refuses to accept as a solo. When you're driving 45 minutes, jumping around all over town, and yes, you have to charge $400 for that initial because you're spending an hour of your time just traveling.
Yeah.
And then you're wondering why you're only getting 8 stops a day done when you got to travel all over the county. It is much cheaper to pay 2.5 times for that company to get the route density in that market and get an instant market and now be able to rearrange all the routes. And now those techs are driving 3 to 7 minutes.
Yep.
Anything more than 7 minutes is inefficiency. This is what a lot of people refuse to accept. If you got right now, we worked our inefficiency when I started from that 45 minutes to an hour to 30, 40. So now we're probably running at about 14 minutes. But you can't instantly fix that. This is not something you can instantly fix unless you acquire another company in that market, because the cost of doing the sales and focusing in on a market and a little town and doing the marketing, the pay-per-click at $15 to $25 a click, you better be a good salesman to close that business and be able to do termite and a lot of other high-paying jobs that it's worth it. If it costs you $150 to acquire that customer, that you have a $1,500 job to show for it at a 10% cost of marketing. And now you have the sales cost at 10 to 15% of sales cost that you're not factoring. This is where everybody makes the mistake. They're not factoring in all the customers, but it's just me. I said, you're just paying you, but you need to factor in that you need a sales commission. You need an admin commission. You need a service commission. You know, the average admin cost in a company is 6%. If you're a smaller company, it's going to be like 10. The average commission is 15% of sales, 10% of sales. The average marketing cost is, if you're growing at 10, but if you're stabilized, it's about 6%. Where are you going to get all these costs from if you don't factor them into your price? This is why you can't take the low price because I need to work, I need to survive. So I will lower my prices to get the work, and then you never recover from that because your customers will never pay more. You automatically shot yourself in the head from the get-go. This is why I said find the niche. If you can make $500 to $600, you're going to need that $500 to $600 because let's say your labor rate and your market to live where you live needs to be $125 an hour. How do you do a cost analysis to figure out what you need per hour? How much can you produce in a day? If you paid yourself as a technician, what does the average technician make in your market?
I mean, when I was on route, you know, they were probably, well, it depends, you know, if you were on route commission or not. But I'd say most of the guys that were here locally, they were doing a mix. So you would get maybe a small base salary, and then the rest of that would come from your route commission. But they were probably making, it would have been less than $1,000 a week. I mean, all day.
So let's say the average technician in that market was making what the average technician in Florida makes, which is about $36,000 a year. Would that be accurate to say that?
Yeah, I mean, if I didn't make good sales on my route, I was probably making $500 a week. I mean, what are you gonna do with that?
Right.
You know.
There you go. So you realize that you have to play a certain game.
Yeah.
That the tech has to make sales because there isn't enough in the production because they were probably low pricing that production.
And there was no route density where I worked. So my county, I actually ran 3 counties, sometimes 4, depending on if the guy down south of me was screwing up. You know, I got to go down there and fix this guy's stuff. But I mean, to drive, you know, an hour in between stops, like you said, you're not going to, there's no way.
How many stops were you producing a day on average?
Dude, if I hustled, I might've done 10 a day.
Okay. So let's say
drive time, like half the day's driving.
See, like that's what my tech does right now.
Yeah.
But he does it in about 6 hours.
Yeah.
And he makes 25% commission on production on $89 to $100 stops.
Yep.
So he's producing 1,000 a day, 800 to 1,000 a day, easy, and he's bringing home between $600 and $1,000 depending on the week. So I got to factor in that cost into my pricing. It's like, what do I realistically need to be able to scale? Let's take the word scale out of this conversation because you're never looking to scale. You're not going to scale. You're going to grow organically. And there's a difference between scaling and organic. Scaling would be, I have 2 routes this year. Next year, I want 5.
Yeah.
And then next year I want 15, and we want to exponentially grow into markets. And acquisition has to be part of that strategy to acquire these little guys and get the route density and all this. That's scaling. We got to do organic growth. Your initial organic growth is going to be your first year because you're starting from 0.
Right.
So you started here, you did this. Next year you can have 100% growth and double because that's easy. And then when you get to year number 3, are you stuck now at year number 3?
Right.
And now you're thinking at year number 2, I might need to hire a tech. The problem is I also increased my lifestyle along the way. You got to keep your lifestyle the same for the first 3 to 5 years and say, I'm not going to take an extra penny and spend it on stupid stuff, you know, because I need to have this money available to me. So I'm going to keep my lifestyle here.